Hello, my name is Lilwen Selina Joinson. Welcome to Innersense Podcast. Yes, Innersense makes the most sense. This is the podcast where we have conversations with farmers and growers and food producers that could, warning, this could seriously increase your knowledge and understanding about farmers and their passion and compassion for what they do at home on their farms. Oh yeah, and farmers, this could seriously improve your bottom line. So, thank you so much, Kit, for giving me your time yesterday and today to take us out here to see your beautiful heifers. We're in a field of heifers. So, I'm gonna pass it over to you, and would you be able to introduce yourself and tell us where we are exactly?
Okay, I'm Kit Pharo. Pharo Cattle Company is our business. Our headquarters is located in eastern Colorado. That's a high plains desert of the United States. We get about 14 to 16 inches of rainfall here. This has been a good year, and it shows these cattle look good. We're a lot more than one ranch and one family. We've grown to we have ranches in 13 different states, cow herds in 13 different states. We produce bulls to sell to other ranchers. And this is our 35th year selling bulls. We're now selling over 1,000 bulls a year in 6 different states and 7 different bull sales. So that's kind of a real quick cap of where we've gone. 35 years ago, I sold 6 bulls. We're doing things almost the opposite of what the industry is doing and have been for 35 years, actually 40 years. But what we're doing is profitable and is catching on, and that's why we're selling 1,000 bulls a year in so many different areas.
Wow. It's a small little company then.
It's big enough.
Big enough, yeah, beautiful. So, but I'm just absolutely moved and touched by your passion and your drive and I don't know what the word is, but your vision. So would you share with us your vision for the industry and why you've decided to go down this route of producing these cows in this way?
Well, man, I don't know if we have enough time. But when I got into this business, I'd been away from agriculture for 15 years. So 40 years ago, I was able to lease some land. I didn't buy any land. I leased some land, bought some cows, and that was 1985. And at that time, the industry in America, and pretty much copied everywhere else in the world, the goal was to make calves and cattle as big as we could, as fast as we could. And that all makes sense because we sell pounds. But I was fortunate enough my dad was still alive and a few other people that I respect, we said, that really doesn't make any sense. We don't need to maximize cow size. We need to maximize profit. We need to maximize enjoyment. If we're producing bigger calves and losing money doing it, it doesn't matter how big your cattle are if they're not profitable. So that's kind of where we took a different approach. You can see my hat says herd quitter on it. We became the herd quitters. We left that herd and says, there's an alternative to the bigger and better. And that's kind of where we are. I would say, frame size, I don't know if your listeners understand what we're saying, but the average critter, beef animal in America is a 5 to 7 frame. And the bigger the number, the higher the frame. Our average beef animals are 3 and 4 frame. Our animals at that much smaller height will weigh as much or more than their taller cattle. And that's simply because we have more body, more mass, and shorter legs. Yeah. And instead of trying to maximize pounds per animal, we decided, we need to maximize pounds per acre because we're all controlling so many amount of land, and we need to make the most out of that. We need to make the most out of every drop of rainfall, every ray of sunshine that we can. And you're not going to do that with the bigger is better type animal. It's going to take, the smaller, thicker, grass efficient, low maintenance, the cattle that can do more with less. Yeah. And what we found is that with our type of cattle, we can increase cow numbers by 30 to 50%. That's huge. Yeah. We're not producing the big giant calves anymore, but we are producing a lot of profit. Yeah. And so that's kind of, the route we've taken. In America right now, cattle prices are at extreme record high levels. It's not going to last. Most people think they're real smart because they're getting record high prices for the calves. No, you didn't do anything to deserve this. And as soon as cow numbers come up, we're going to lose those high prices. And at that point, it's going to be like Warren Buffett says, we're going to find out who's swimming naked, or when the tide goes out, we're going to find out who's swimming naked. Yeah. There's a lot of cattlemen that think they're doing great jobs right now. When prices are cut in half, they're out of business. And that's kind of been my passion is, I don't want to see third, fourth, fifth generation family farms and ranches go under because they can't, they can't survive. Yeah. And I think, I'm at the age I should probably retire, but man, this is a great time to be in the business, and I think we have a message that needs to be heard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just going back to that family farm, that family ranch, and so if we just look at that, right, and what you've just said, if I'm just clear, what you're saying is with changing the frame of the animal, you've been able to put another 50% 30 to 50% livestock on that very same ground and produce X amount more meat or however you want to term it to give you that cash in your pocket.
And it is more than frame height.
Yeah.
When we first started our goal, I wasn't real sure where we were going to end up, but we just started taking the inputs away. We no longer feed our cattle anything other than sea salt and vinegar. And minute amount of vinegar. Most people have heavy supplements year round, so we started taking all the supplements away. We stopped treating for parasites and flies. We just started taking those things away and we call them crutches. So when you pull enough crutches away, some cows fall over. They're gone. Yeah. So what we've created is not only a smaller, shorter, thicker animal, but their maintenance requirements are, just minute compared to the average cow in America. Yeah. So we can eat a minimum amount of grass and get fat on it, and then we're ready to cycle and reproduce and those sort of things. The average cow is just not bred that way. They're bred for size and growth, and they don't operate on a ranch like that.
Yeah. And then when we were talking, you were saying that you've changed, not now, but over time, you've done it a long time ago. You've gone with nature, so you're carving. Go through the bit about the carving pattern and when, okay. And that process.
I could create the perfect cow, but there's two other things that we need to be thinking about, and that's calving in sync with nature, or the best way to say that is calving in sync with your best forage resources. Whenever my grass is the best and my cows and heifers are growing, gaining weight and putting on fat, that's when they should be calving. That's the way nature is. In their attempt, the industry to have bigger calves, they started calving earlier and earlier and earlier. So, calving in the snow of January, February, March, and even April, they did that to get bigger calves. But if 20% of those calves die because of a snowstorm, that didn't really work out. And the other thing is your grazing management. You could have the perfect cow, calve her in sync with nature, and still waste your grass. So we're doing, and we've been doing this since 1994. That's 31 years or something. But we've started rotating our cattle through a series of smaller paddocks to where they eat every plant gets eaten once, and then the cows are moved, and we may not come back to that for 100 to 200 days. So that allows that plant is stimulated by that cow eating it, and then you move the cow, and that plant grows back. It starts growing deeper roots, bigger roots, more on top. You know, you don't have to do very much to increase your grass production by 50%. So if you can increase your cow numbers by 30% because of the size and type of the cow, and you can increase your numbers again by 50% because of your grass management, it's a no-brainer. I mean, this business is so easy to make money in, and yet most of the people aren't making money.
Okay. So it's like a drop the mic moment, right? You know, most people are not doing that. So why are they not adapted that?
It's different. It requires change. It definitely requires a paradigm shift, as we mentioned earlier. It's hard to make that paradigm shift because to do so, you have to admit, okay, I was wrong. I can't change until I first admit I was wrong and I need to change this. You know, I've been blessed with the ability to admit I'm wrong and move on quickly. You know, I'm an innovator. You know, I don't want to be the last to come to the party. I want to be the first. But most people, unfortunately, just don't seem to be geared that way. You know, they'd rather stay in the herd and do what everybody else is doing because they don't know. I mean, they're afraid of failure, and yet they're going to fail because they're afraid of failure.
Yeah. So that, you know, because you're leading into exactly, you know, why I'm even here, right? Why I've even ventured across, you know, to meet you, because I was in a 2-day event in England, in the UK, with Dr. Alan Williams, and we were talking about soil, and we were talking about rotational grazing, amp grazing, you know, and all the things that you're saying, looking at how can we help those farmers be efficient, stay on those family farms and live more relaxed, if you like, more, you know, less stress, with no chemicals, you know, no fertilizer, not looking to pay those bills at the end of the month all the time. So everything you're saying, but this mindset shift, this mindset potential change, right, is not easy for a lot of people. So when you're an innovator, when you're a visionary, it is, you know, you've worked in a different industry. You've also, tell us a bit about that, because that was new to me today, about your, you know, how, you know, what did you do in order to be this way, right, in the past?
Well, when I graduated, I rodeoed in college. I rodeoed professionally for 8 years, and that's not a good way for this guy to make a living. I made just enough to stay in business. But as I was rodeoing, I was working in a feedlot. That's where we fatten cattle artificially in artificial environments with heavy amounts of grain. And as a kid, 10-year-old kid, I told myself, I said, before I'm 30 years old, I'm going to be my own boss. And that thought rolled through my head till I was 28 years old, and I said, this is it. So I left. And at that time, I had an opportunity to open a retail business as an entrepreneur, and I sold solar systems and I sold wood stoves, you know, kind of an alternative source of energy. And we did that for 5 years before we had an opportunity to lease some land and buy some cows. But I think having an opportunity to work on the backside of a retail counter, dealing with farmers and ranchers, gives you a different perspective as a farmer or rancher. You know, it's most people were born and raised on the family farm ranch, never left it, and they don't see the rest of the world. You know, another thing that kind of crept into my life was my dad was born and raised as a city kid in Denver. So when he was able to get a few cows, you know, he wasn't hindered by the bad traditions that everybody else had. You know, that, and I think that has helped me to question everything. You know, don't just take what your neighbors are doing, what Grandpa's doing. Don't just say that's got to be right, because that's what we've always done. At one time it was right, but time changes. You know, what worked 50 years ago is not going to work today. What worked 20 years ago isn't going to work today. Now, with these record high prices, unfortunately, it is working. When those prices are cut in half, we're gonna lose a lot of family farms, and that saddens me.
Yeah. And that's, and that's driven your passion and mission, right, to produce, to carry on what you're doing here and, expand and produce these bulls that are raised on grass, or very little grass, actually. Yeah. And to change. So, yeah.
And we do more than, I say we do more than sell bulls. I mean, we have the philosophies and the concepts behind our program are just as important as the genetics we produce. Now, we talked about the three things: the genetics, the grazing system, and calving, or producing, working with nature instead of against nature. Once you get those three things down and working, it's pretty easy.
That's great. And then I just want to say, before we end this section, I was fascinated when we were out yesterday with the heifers, the 2-year-old heifers with their calves at foot, and we're here now with these young stock, and I'm looking at the flies. Tell us a bit about what you've done with regard to the flies.
Okay. We started the fly problems in the beef industry are huge. I mean, it's like costing us $2 billion a year. And 25 years ago, we were ahead of the curve because nobody else even could find out where we went. But I had a friend ask me, he says, okay, you guys are ahead of the curve. You're doing what the industry needs to do. When the industry catches up, where are you going to go next? And that got me to thinking, you got to stay a step ahead of the status quo, or you become the status quo. And he suggested that we work on parasite resistance. And as you walk through any set of cows, probably anywhere in the world, you're going to see an animal that has very few flies, and right next to her is an animal that is covered with flies. And we started noticing that in our cow herds, and we started, calling us, accordingly. We stopped using toxic chemicals to control flies or worms or anything else. We just stopped, and that allows nature to select the good ones. That's survival of the fittest. And so we've been at this for 25 years, and I noticed yesterday when we were in the older heifers that with their first calves, flies were not a problem. I mean, there were a few flies. I didn't see any animals that had a heavy load. We just came from a group of 15-month-old bulls that are being developed on grass for sale. I didn't hardly see any flies on them. Those two groups were on native grass. This group of heifers, if anybody else looked at these, they would say, there's no flies there. I mean, I see a few more flies here than I did on those other two groups, and I think part of that is because we are on grass, but it's not a native grass. I see these heifers probably don't have as slick a hair coat as the bulls and the younger cows did, but fly resistance, it's huge. Heritability is like 57%. That's huge. If you really wanted to have a fly resistant herd, you could do it in less than 5 years.
Whoa.
And again, when we first started doing this 25 years ago, the bull producing industry in America all made fun of me. I mean, that you'll never get to do anything. Well, look, I think we did it.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. And as we look round, I know I'm not going to spin the camera yet because it might go all wrong. But if we look round, some of these red ones here, right, we can't see any flies. And there's a few here, just to the left here.
Yeah. Black cattle will have more flies than red cattle.
All right.
That's always been that way.
Okay.
Yeah,
so that's the next 10 years then, of your work.
We're trying to catch up, the black ones up. But you're right. I mean, I see 4 red backs right here that have no flies. And I see some black backs over here that have flies.
Yeah.
So good observation.
So Kit, I can't thank you enough for, spending the time, taking me round in your truck and sharing this information. And I'm just very blessed. So thank you so much for changing the industry, giving opportunities to people, and living your best life.
Thanks for allowing me to share. I am passionate, and I appreciate what I've learned from you, during the few hours I spent with you too.
Yeah. Wow. Teamwork. Thank you.